Hey guys, welcome back to the Seagull Football Network. I'm Braden. This is my brother Ben. We know it's been a minute, so we apologize for the delay in between videos. Life kind of came out as fast. We had a lot of stuff going on. A couple of things that caused delays. Me and my wife had a baby a couple months ago, so there were just a lot of things that kind of slowed our process down. But we are back and we are ready to keep things rolling. So we're going to kick things off with an end of season recap. The 2024-2025 NFL season just ended, and we are here to talk about some of the stuff that happened, some of the things that we predicted correctly, incorrectly, so on and so forth. So we're going to pass it over to Ben to kind of the Super Bowl and talk about that a little bit.
I think if you're not a Kansas City fan, your first thought is, wow. I think a lot of people are, hooray, yeah, Kansas City lost. It's a lot more for me. Wow. Philadelphia absolutely dominated Kansas City. It wasn't just a win, it was a stomping for the ages. Philadelphia, the Eagles, they had an incredible game plan, both sides of the ball. They as it's been heavily publicized since the Super Bowl, we know the Eagles didn't rush more than four the entire game, not a single blitz. That is just a testament to, first of all, the talent of that secondary. Reed Blankenship. You've got Cooper DeJean back there, big play Slay, Quinion Mitchell, an incredible secondary, able to blanket the field and allow that front four to really get home time after time after time. They never let Mahomes get comfortable. It definitely didn't help, as we know. They had a center playing at left tackle for the Super Bowl, which is never a good sign. But again, the Eagles put on an absolute defensive clinic. Kudos to defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I would argue one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time. Incredible at what he does. On the offensive side of the ball, the Eagles knew that the Chiefs were going to sell out to stop Saquon Barkley, and they let them do that. Saquon Barkley, it was his birthday, so it's unfortunate, he didn't play as well as he could have, and we wish he could have. But it allowed the rest of the offense to really open up because the Chiefs were so focused on Saquon. And it really showed Jalen Hurts and his prowess. He's not the best quarterback in the league by far, but he truly does have an arm. He understands blocking schemes better than almost any quarterback in the NFL. And he really does. He's begun to really open up and start being able to read a field better. So once again, kudos to those coordinators, Kellen Moore, helping Jalen Hurts really develop into a true NFL quarterback for the first time. One of the things that really kind of chafed me, finally, is Kansas City. It was kind of rough just to see by the second quarter, kind of late in the second quarter, it was tough to see their veteran players outside of Mahomes just kind of giving up when things got tough. That's not how you come back from a blowout like this. That's not how you make it respectable. My first example is the 28-3 Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl. The Patriots never felt out of it because Brady kept them in it. Tom Brady, he pushed and he pushed, and he said, hey, we're not out of this. We're going to win this game. Instead, the Chiefs leaders on the team, they just kind of quit trying, and their body language showed it. And I will say that was a little rough to watch. But overall, really good Super Bowl. Probably the last blowout I can think of is the 43-8 Seattle Seahawks win in 2013 over the Broncos. So really great game. I was really happy with it, but yeah, just wow.
Yeah, I think, personally, I wish it had been a little bit closer. And obviously, the score looks closer than I think the game really was with those last few touchdowns late from the Chiefs. I think there are a couple things that KC definitely did well, and one of those is integrating Xavier Worthy. Clearly, they had a good game plan for him. They worked him into their offense, and especially that second half, he excelled. He, on that second touchdown, I mean, it was so funny. You look and Mahomes is looking downfield and just fires almost immediately, and you're like, who could he even be throwing to? And then on the replay, they show Xavier Worthy just running past one Eagle, two Eagles, three Eagles, past the whole defense, scores the touchdown. It was absolutely beautiful. I love what they did with Xavier Worthy. Obviously tough to see somebody like DeAndre Hopkins finally get to a Super Bowl after his long career and then fall short. I've seen a lot of rumors that he's planning on retiring. I don't think that's true at this point. I hope not. I hope he gets another shot at a Super Bowl ring. But overall, yeah, I mean, it was a I wish it had been closer. I wish it had been a little bit more of an even game, but we got what we got, and I'm really happy for Saquon Barkley, especially being on the Giants for that long, and then immediately after you know, getting on another team, he gets a ring. So I'm really happy for him.
No,
We do
Philly's
have,
his hometown team.
yeah,
I will
uh,
jump back to something you said really quick.
mhm,
Talking about Chiefs retirements, it is very likely at this point that tight end Travis Kelsey, some would say all-time great, is going to retire. Effectively, the Chiefs gave him an ultimatum. He has a couple of guarantees that vest March 14th, the start of the new league year. And they essentially told him, hey, you need to give us a decision before March 14th what you're going to do. But they also told him that their plan is to start kind of backing him out of that main focal point of the offense role and starting putting him in more of a rotational tight end role where he can sit as a mentor to other tight ends, i.e., Jared Wiley, Noah Gray, who are currently on the roster, possibly an unnamed tight end that they bring in. So it really is looking like Travis Kelsey is going to join his brother in retirement.
yeah, it does seem that way. I think, yeah, he's for sure one of the greatest tight ends of all time. I think he sits right up there underneath Gronk. There's maybe a couple others that, he's not quite
Tony
on the same level
Gonzalez.
as. Yeah. But yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal. Unfortunately, a little bit of a down season, which I think we both kind of called the opposite. We both thought he would be a little bit more of a focal point in the offense again.
We
Early,
also
early,
thought that the
early.
Chiefs' passing game was going to be elite, and it just wasn't.
Yeah. That being said, we do have a little bit of news that just came out, 30 minutes ago at this point, today.
Yeah.
And that is that the Carolina Panthers have re signed quarterback Andy Dalton to a 2-year deal. I'm pretty excited about this. Obviously, Bryce Young took big steps forward at the end of this season, ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in the last few weeks when you look at his touchdown interception ratios. Um, and so, obviously, I think he's going to continue to be the starter moving forward. I think they're going to continue building an offense around Bryce Young. But having Andy Dalton there in case of injury or in case he has a couple more down games is a really, really good safety blanket for the Panthers.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that they're trying to do is exactly what he's done this year, and that is head coach Dave Canales benched Bryce Young for a reason. He felt that Young would have a better learning experience sitting on the bench and watching Andy Dalton play because Dalton's been in the league for years, and a lot of people, aren't very high on his play, but he has been a solid starter for 15 years or so. So that being said, I think that Young learned a lot from that experience, sitting on the sideline holding a clipboard, and Andy Dalton is unlikely to start again in Young's place unless there's an injury, God forbid. But what Andy Dalton is going to do is he's going to continue to reprise that mentor role and sit behind him and say, hey, I saw this, I saw that. Hey, you could have executed this play a little differently. And that's what made Bryce Young who he is Dave Canales and Andy Dalton. So I think that that is a very good move for them continuity wise.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of our predictions for the season, what we got right, kind of some of what we got wrong. Let's start off with the Super Bowl. I think both of us had Kansas City playing against Detroit in the Super Bowl. I had Kansas City winning. Obviously, that didn't happen, though they did make it there, and Detroit didn't make it. Let's talk a little bit about why Detroit missed out on the Super Bowl. Obviously, they had a lot of injury issues. Aiden Hutchinson, a lot of other key players on that defense. So even though their offense was high power, constantly scoring, right, unstoppable, the defense really let them down with the injuries this season, and on occasion just not playing at the highest level. Do you think there's anything beyond the injuries that caused them to miss out?
I have one other thing, but I'll focus on the injuries for just a second more. Obviously, the Detroit Lions, like every year, a team or two, sometimes three or four, will get hit with the injury bug, and that is just a reality of the NFL. It is a physical game, so the injury bug is going to happen. Just teams are going to get ravaged by injuries. You're going to end up with millions of dollars on injured reserve, and that's just the reality of it. However, I I think that this year for the Lions is a cautionary tale as well because yes, they got unlucky, but at the same time they also experienced injuries due to, I would say, bad personnel decisions by head coach Dan Campbell. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of Dan Campbell, but when you're leaving all of your starters on both sides of the ball in till the final whistle in a 50-point blowout, no crap that your players are going to be fatigued and get injured easier later down the line. And so, unfortunately, that's what they did over and over and over. They played Jacksonville, they played Tennessee, they blew these teams out of the water, and Jared Goff was the one taking the knee at the end of the game. That's wrong. That shouldn't be happening. And I get it. It's all about the attitude for them. And I yes, that motivated the Lions, and that was Campbell's whole thing was like, no, the guys who played the game, who put up 50 points, are the guys who are going to finish the game. But you've got to protect your players. And at the end of the day, you're the coach. It is your job to keep your players safe. And he jeopardized every single one of those players by forcing them to stay out on that field and play that game. And that ultimately is, I think, what ended up contributing the most to their injury bug was the personnel issues. Now, the second thing that I think that kind of did them in the divisional round against the Washington Commanders is something that I think we all deep down knew and didn't want to admit, and that is that Jared Goff is their quarterback. Now, Jared Goff, he's looked great this year. He looked great last year. He's been a good Detroit Lion. But at the end of the day, Jared Goff will always be the Jared Goff we all know. Sean McVay gave up on him and traded him out of Los Angeles for a reason. Goff will always struggle with pressure. He will always struggle with exotic looks. When he makes a mistake, they tend to snowball. He throws one interception, he's going to throw another one. He's going to get happy feet in the pocket. He's going to be inaccurate. And that's exactly what we saw against Washington. They came in off of the bye week, so they hadn't played for a week. Goff does not do well under pressure, so playoff game, he just crumpled. It hurt to watch. It was awful. Do I think that if Detroit's defense had been fully healthy, they could have won that despite Jared Goff's mistakes? Yes, I do. However, their defense wasn't healthy, and Jared Goff is Jared Goff. He threw, what was it, 3 interceptions that game, or was it 2? 2, and I think J-Mo threw 1. Oh, it was 3? It was bad. Yeah, it was miserable to watch. And I mean, I was watching it with a buddy of mine, and I just turned to him and I was like, Jared Goff is going to be Jared Goff. That's the reality of it. I like to see that he's had a career resurgence, but at the end of the day, he is the same guy he's been since he was taken first overall in 2016. And that means that he is going to have those issues. So I think that those two things, Jared Goff's pressure struggles and the defense being so injured, are kind of the two main contributing factors to their early surprising exit. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I also we've talked about this a little bit previously, and I know you disagreed with me, but I'm really not a big fan of playoff coaches and coordinators being allowed to interview with other teams, even though like on bye week. I get you don't have a game this week. You're not necessarily super focused on things, but I still think that it's a good idea for them to be off limits so they can focus on winning playoff games instead of interviewing with other teams. And Ben Johnson was interviewing with the Chicago Bears that week. And, I didn't love all of the offensive play calling. I saw some stuff that was just a little bit too cutesy, I don't know. The Jameson Williams interception, that just wasn't a good call from any perspective. And so I don't love when coaches are interviewing, they might have offers lined up and their head isn't fully focused on the game that they're playing. The same thing happened with Arthur Smith and the Titans years ago. I don't remember exactly what season it was. He interviewed elsewhere, a couple days before and had one of the worst games that he ever called immediately after in the playoffs. So I don't think that's fully to blame, but I do think that's also an aspect that the NFL should consider changing and making it so that those coaches are also off limits. Before we move on, I do have just one little fun fact about Jared Goff since we were talking about him. And that is this season, Jared Goff had one game with 5 interceptions and one game with 5 touchdowns. Now, you would probably think that he won the game with 5 touchdowns and lost the game with 5 interceptions, but that is exactly the opposite. He beat the Texans with 5 interceptions and lost to the Bills after throwing 5 touchdowns. Just a fun little fact, completely random, but
I remember both of those games. Yeah, it was wild. The Houston game
oh yeah.
especially. It was miserable to watch him. Again, Jared Goff makes a mistake and it snowballs, but this man, they still managed to pull off a win. Absolutely
Yep.
insane.
All right, moving on to some of the other season predictions. Just going through real quick. When we're talking about the awards, the NFL awards, I didn't get most of them right. In fact, I got all of them wrong except for one of them, which I'm going to call out, which is the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Back all the way before the season started, I think it was right after the draft even that we were talking about this. I called that Jared Verse would win Defensive Rookie of the Year, and sure enough, a couple weeks ago, he did win it. So putting that one in the win column for me, correctly called that. Definitely got a little bit lucky there.
Yeah, I will say my two proudest are MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. Not to trump yours or whatever, but I did call Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley, so that made me pretty happy. I will
Lamar
say.
didn't win MVP though.
But he was second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought maybe for
No,
like
no, no, no.
for a second I thought you.
I didn't make that very
Yeah.
clear. I didn't make that very clear how I said that. I was saying I got pretty close with Lamar, and then I
Yeah.
called Saquon. My bad.
All right. And then division winners. We had, called who we thought were going to win the divisions. So I went through and I double checked. I got 5 out of 8, which is not too bad. The ones I did get wrong, I got decently wrong. And those were Miami winning the AFC East, San Francisco winning the NFC West, and Washington winning the NFC East. Now, Washington, not too far off. Only a couple games behind the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles were almost undefeated. It's kind of hard to beat that. But I do feel really good about calling Washington being as good as they were. And then San Francisco was really tough. Everything kind of fell apart for them. Nothing went well. So that was really tough to see, and they ended up finishing last in their division. How did you do with the divisions?
Yeah, that was an injury bug season. I certainly got some really right. I called Philadelphia winning their division. I called Kansas City, the easy ones. I called Tampa. I called Detroit. But I also got some really embarrassing ones. At the beginning of the season, I was really high on the Browns roster talent. And obviously they got hit with some injuries, but also Deshaun Watson exists.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, that just did not go my way. I said they were going to be a really good team, and they weren't. I also banked on Aaron Rodgers looking like late career Green Bay Aaron Rodgers, where he wasn't great, but he was good, and he was not. He was really, really bad. So I called the New York Jets winning their division, and they just didn't. So there were some that were really, really embarrassing for me, but ultimately that's how the NFL goes. It's any given Sunday, and sometimes you just can't predict it.
Yeah, 100%. Alrighty, wrapping that up, let's talk a little bit about what the offseason for the NFL looks like. I've kind of pulled a couple of the bigger milestones to look at, and I'm going to just run through those really fast. So starting today, February 18th, through March 4th, there's the window for franchise and transition tag designations. From everything I've seen, it looks like it's going to be kind of a quiet season for tags. It sounds like they're only estimated to be about 4 teams so far that people are expecting to tag players. One of those is likely going to be T. Higgins if the Bengals do not get to a deal with him soon. And it sounds like the Vikings might end up using one on Sam Darnold if they don't get to a deal soon. The Vikings had 2.
The rumor is that J.J. McCarthy's recovery is well behind schedule, and that they may not have him ready for week 1 next year, which means it'll force them to re-sign Darnold, but they don't want to pay him starter money, so they're going to franchise him.
Right, and they had 2 other players who were up for new contracts who both pushed off their void dates until later so that they can so they can re-sign them more easily. And that was Byron Murphy and Aaron Jones. So, but from what I heard, Sam Darnold did not want to, so it sounds like he's likely going to get a tag as well. Then after that, on March 10th, contact with upcoming free agents is permitted. That's a couple days before they're actually allowed to sign. Like you mentioned, the 14th is the new league start date. But initial contact will be allowed on March 10th. Then on March 28th, this isn't technically NFL related, but it's still football. That is the kickoff for week 1 of the UFL. Spring football is always fun. It kind of helps fill that gap in our hearts when the NFL is not running. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And then April 24th through the 26th will be the NFL draft. That's very exciting. We'll get to see what players go where. We'll start to talk about who we think is going to, who's going to fit in well with their new teams, who we think might be the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. We'll start to kind of start speculating on some of those very early there in April, late April, early in the season progress. And then on May 1st is the deadline for the 5th-year option for 2022 first-round draft picks, a few of which include Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner, Chris Olave, and Trent McDuffie were kind of 4 that I picked out there. So that'll be really interesting to see who gets that 5th-year option and who doesn't. That kind of wraps up my little off-season bit, kind of some of the things to look forward to, and we will definitely be talking about all of those as they come along.
Yeah, as you mentioned, free agency's coming up. So, for our next move, the next thing that we're going to be doing relating to this year's season is going to be a free agency recap. We're looking forward to kind of seeing where all of these free agents go. We're going to kind of talk about it. Between now and then, we're going to be dropping a couple of deep dives, some fun special episodes coming up that just to kind of fill that time to keep you guys satiated, because obviously we know we left you on such a long, quiet note, and we want to make sure that we come back and really, really push that back to full functionality. So that being said, keep an eye out for those couple of deep dives. Moving past free agency, obviously we're going to have a bunch of draft content. We're going to be going over, some rookies that are coming into the NFL, our draft grades on them, things like that. We've been talking about live streaming the NFL draft first round. So if you guys think that that's a great idea, definitely leave something in the comments. Let us know. We want that feedback. We want to know if it's something that our viewers would watch. Otherwise, we don't really know if we want to put that time in. So obviously, we'd love for if you guys could engage with us. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on what's upcoming, what you guys would like to see. Other than that, it's been great seeing you guys again. We're excited to be back. We plan to be back for the long haul this time. So thank you guys so much for your patience. Thank you for your viewership. Leave us a like, a comment, subscribe, and hit that bell if you haven't. And yeah, thanks so much.